Context: I'm a female living in the Midwest. I was 21 years old when this happened. I dated a guy named Stan for about 3 years. I met him in high school, and he seemed normal back then. We began dating shortly after meeting, and 2 weeks before he was due to ship off to basic training for the Army. Over the entirety of our relationship, I maybe saw Stan in person for about 6 months total. Most of our relationship was letters, phone calls, and online correspondence. I first noticed that Stan had issues when 4 days into our relationship, he told me that he loved me. Being young and stupid, I thought it was destiny. Over the following months, he began saying things like, "I love you. I would end it all if we ever broke up." He started experiencing depression and took medications resulting in violent mood swings and panic attacks. His mental instability, coupled with his alcoholism and self-inflicted social isolation, save for myself and his mother, made for one hell of a shit show on the horizon. Years passed, and I grew exhausted of caring for his fragile psyche, and tired of waiting for his 4 years in the Army to end. I broke up with him. That's when my personal hell began. First, it was the phone calls. I ignored them after the first hour. Then came the voicemails. "I love you. Please come back to me. You fat cow. You deserve to die." Then came the online harassment. He defaced my Facebook by calling me things like whore and slut on everything that he could. Things quieted down for a few days after I blocked him, and I tried to salvage what I could online. I received one last voicemail from him. It began with silence, and then there was a single gunshot, followed by 5 minutes of silence afterward. My stomach dropped. Had he shot himself? Did I cause this? I started crying. I didn't want to believe it. I got a text from him about 10 minutes later, saying that he hoped the voicemail taught me a lesson, and that I was going to hell for what I was putting him through. There were a few minor incidents after that, a changed phone number, a threat of a protective order, but eventually I put this whole thing behind me. Luckily, I had the support of my friends and family throughout this entire ordeal. I then came back to college from winter break, and pulled into the driveway of the house I share with 2 other roommates. I was the first one back. I get to the front door, and then noticed that it was ajar. I started shaking. I should have just stopped and called the police, but I was panicking and wasn't thinking clearly. I reached into my purse and pulled out my pistol I carry for self-defense. I chambered around. That movement was the scariest thing I've ever done, but I did not know what was on the other side of that door, and things were about to get ugly. I opened it quickly, my gun raised. I checked the bedrooms and closets, then the living room, leaving my room for last. The moments leading up to when I rounded the corner of my doorway were sickening. The house was empty. The relief was so overwhelming that I began sobbing. It was then that I called the police, and they sent somebody over within the hour. I used that time to tally the damage. My room was destroyed. My roommates were fine. There were expensive electronics all over the house, left completely untouched. My room was the only one ransacked. Very personal items had been taken, perfumes that Stan had bought me, jewelry, a pair of high heels, paintings that I had done, my camera, my beloved satchel covered in patches that I had collected during my travels, and other odds and ends. The most disturbing part was that all the hiding places I usually left my gun when I'm on campus were gone through. After filing a report with the police, I had all the locks replaced and told everyone of my suspicions. However, I never heard from Stan again, although I do know that he still lives near my hometown, and I make it a habit of never going anywhere I could possibly see him. I can only imagine what horrors he would have done if he had gotten a hold of a gun registered in my name. I have since moved out of that house, and am now much more careful with who I associate with. I think in the end, I came out on the other side a lot smarter. In my late teens, I began a serious relationship with my first ever boyfriend. In those days, I had zero confidence, no self-esteem, and a very warped idea of what a relationship should be like. The adults around me set a very bad example. Being so shy and innocent, I fell madly in love. I'm still not sure how. From the beginning of this relationship, my boyfriend was very controlling and abusive. Looking back on it now makes me angry, more so that I put up with him for 5 years. He hated my friends and family for no apparent reason, and I really had to fight to keep this relationship going. But as I got older, I got really sick of his shit. And when my family were going away for a weekend, I found the perfect opportunity to invite all my friends to my house for a get-together. Of course, when my boyfriend found out about this, he tried to put a stop to it, and attempted to guilt me into coming over his house instead. But I didn't let up, and my friends arrived at my house around 7 p.m. We were all sitting in the living room drinking, making small talk, and listening to music. But all night my boyfriend was blowing up my phone, demanding that I make my friends leave. My friends soon caught wind of it, and they were already unhappy about me still being with him, and the topic of conversation became my dysfunctional relationship. My friends expressed their anger and dislike of him, with the usual, "You know you could do better. You need to get rid of him. He doesn't deserve you." Generally, we enjoyed the evening, and my friends began to leave at 1 a.m. I wasn't afraid to be alone in the house, as I have a Rottweiler. She was usually friendly, but would protect me if I was in danger. One of my last friends was about to leave, but he hung back a bit to talk to me about my boyfriend. "Your boyfriend is an abusive, controlling piece of shit, and nobody likes him. I think it's best that you stop wasting your time and move on from him." I agreed with him, and we said our goodbyes. I then watched all my friends hurry through the downpouring rain back to their cars. I then went to the kitchen where I had left my phone to charge. As I picked up my phone, something in the kitchen window caught my eye. Standing directly outside of my kitchen, in the downpouring rain, was my boyfriend. He was wearing a hooded rain jacket and had a hate-filled scowl on his face. I screamed. He then moved from the window toward the back door. I knew that I would have to face him. I went to the back door onto the patio in the rain. He was standing only a few feet away from me. His breathing was labored, and his eyes were bloodshot. Before I could get a word out, he bent down and picked up a broken broom handle. What are you doing?" "You didn't listen to me, and now I'm going to hurt you." I didn't know what to do. My heart was racing. I should mention that I was quite drunk at this point and was frozen in place. He swung the broom handle into a flower basket above my head, which tipped sideways, spilling soil right down my shoulder. He then slammed down the broom handle and grabbed me around the throat. My dog must have heard him. She then came bounding out of the back door, leapt up and bit his arm, and began to shake him. Seeing the fear on his face was priceless. She eventually released him, and he collapsed on the ground, crying. He then confessed that he had walked to my house a couple of hours ago, snuck through the back door, and hid in a cupboard under the stairs, and had listened to every word that me and my friends had said about him. I took my dog back inside and locked the door. When I looked out of the window, he was still lying in the rain, crying. When he realized that I wasn't coming back out, he left, and that was the end of that. The thought of still being with him makes my stomach turn. Some background. My mom dated a guy named Will when my older sister and I were much younger. I was about 3 and my sister was 9. They had been dating for a couple of years, until she figured out that he had been doing hard drugs. So she broke off the relationship. He didn't take this too well, and began to stalk her. Which leads us to this story. In the beginning it wasn't that bad. She would, coincidentally, run into him when she was out and about, as well as receive numerous phone calls each week, begging for her to take him back. Each time she refused because she knew he was still not sober. This infuriated him, and soon things got worse. My mom began receiving threats from him and no longer felt safe in our apartment. Because of him, I began to stay with my dad a lot more. I didn't normally stay with him because he was an alcoholic. My mother and sister would stay at my grandparents' house. As soon as my mom started staying with them, Will caught on. Within the first couple of days, my mom had woken up to a broken windshield with a rock in her driver's seat. It was never proven, but we knew that Will did it. After this fiasco, things began to subside a bit until nothing happened at all. My mom gathered up her things as well as my sister, and they moved back into the apartment. Months went by, and my mom heard nothing from Will. I soon moved back in as well, and things soon returned to the way they used to be, except I still would go stay with my dad on occasion. On a night that I was staying with my dad, my sister begged my mom for them to spend the night at my grandparents'. At first she said no, but after a while she gave in and packed up their things for the night. While there, my mom's phone number came up on the caller ID. She then knew that Will was inside the apartment. It took the police no time to get there, seeing as they had been called a few times before regarding Will. When they entered the apartment, all the lights were off. When they turned them on, they saw someone in a chair facing away from them. He stood to his feet, thinking it was my family members coming home, and gave the police a clear view of the knife in his hand. Will was hauled off to the police station that night, while some cops searched the apartment. First, they discovered a broken window. It was a first-floor apartment. Then, in the bedroom, they found that alcohol had been poured all over the bed, and shards of glass were everywhere. After that most chilling discovery, they then found a lighter on the bedside table. While Will was incarcerated, my mom came to pick me up from my dad's house and take me home one night. She came in to get me, took me out to the car, strapped me into my car seat in the back, then walked around to the front of the car. Just before she was about to open her door, she noticed a man in the passenger seat. She freaked out and ran around to the back to get me. While she was doing this, the man escaped. The police were called, and although my mom had cash and medications in plain sight, the only thing taken was some personal items from her purse, her social security card, and driver's license. It was obvious to my mother that this man had been hired by Will. Because of our broken justice system, Will was released from prison a short time after this incident. My mom had taken out a restraining order on him, but that didn't stop him from contacting her again. Will called and asked for her to take him back. My mom, of course, said, "Hell no." Desperate to be with her, he took extreme measures to get her attention. He figured if maybe he was hurt, she would feel bad for him and take him back. So using that rationale, he grabbed a gun and shot himself in the leg, knowing it wouldn't do much harm. But as fate would have it, he shot right into a major artery and he bled to death. This story still gives me the chills whenever I hear it. My family never even told me about any of this until I was 12. If my sister hadn't begged to stay with my grandparents out of nowhere, things could have been very different for everyone involved. Hey everyone, this is your Uncle Unit. Thank you so much for checking out my video. If you have a story that you would like me to narrate on this channel, please send it to my email, unit522submit@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you would like to support this channel even further, you can check out my merch store. There's a link for that in the description. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you stay tuned for the next video. Until then, never forget. There's always